FuncoLand. Just the name evokes tons of memories of the late 1990s through the early part of the 2000s. Most specifically for me, 1998 through 2000. It's a store that opened up in my area in 1998, and I had heard about FuncoLand in magazines, but I never dreamed that we would get one anywhere close to where I lived. Because honestly, and it certainly seems that way no matter where you live, but it seemed where I lived at the time that nothing cool ever shows up. It was just a place, because it's populated but not overly populated, that no big really cool chain would want to open stores where I was. Nevertheless, as I'm driving up the road, I look in a shopping plaza, and there's the sign, and there's the store, and I had to stop, and I had to go in. And its appearance came at a time in my life that it was absolutely essential that something good happened, because things were pretty bad. I had just emerged from a really bad relationship that I had been living with someone, and it didn't work out. So I lost that. I had to file bankruptcy because in that relationship I spent money completely poorly, because I was in my 20s and I was an idiot. So I didn't even have my own car at that point. I was borrowing my mom's. I was working in a job that I couldn't stand. I hated going to work every day. Every day was literally a struggle. And yet when I drive on this road and I see FuncoLand, everything changed. There was a light that went off, that things really aren't terrible. Now, to give a little bit of background before I get into FuncoLand, my video game buying habits really went two ways through the 1990s. Either through independent video game stores, and there were two. There was Fantasy Realms, which unfortunately is no longer around, and I've talked about Fantasy Realms on video before. And then there was Video Game Castle, which is still a thing. It is still pretty much in the same place, and is a place that I've visited on and off. So those were the independent places. Then I went to big box stores like Toys R Us or Electronics Boutique or Software Etc. or Babbage's or any of those places. Those were really the only two options that I had. So FuncoLand came out of nowhere and really took me by surprise. So when I pulled into the parking lot and I had to go into this place, it was just after I had gotten out of work. I was in a terrible mood, and all of a sudden everything just shifted. So I get out of the car, I go to the door, and interestingly enough, there's a sign that says help wanted or now hiring. And a light went off in my head, and I said, I have to work here. I absolutely have to work here. So I went in, and as it turned out, the district manager was working at the time. He was training people because the store was still brand new. And when I looked inside, it was everything that I could ever want. Not only did they have all of the consoles, Nintendo, Super Nintendo, Genesis, Nintendo 64, PlayStation, Saturn, they had the portable game consoles too. So they had all that stuff, but also they had lines of demo stations. There were probably 4, 5, like 7 or 8 that you could play games on, and they were always running, so you could pick it up and, oh wow, that game looks really cool, I'm going to try that, and you could. And it was possible, even though it was never recommended, that you could spend hours in there just playing a game. It's almost like a free arcade, although you really didn't want to use it like that. It was just, the atmosphere was awesome. It really is the best word that I can describe for that store. So I talked to the district manager, and I asked him how long they've been open, and I gave him the drill, the 20 questions, because I was really curious as to what was going on with the store. And after I got the story, I asked him about the open positions, and he said to put in my resume and fill out an application, and that's what I did. I grabbed the application, I went home that night, I filled everything out, I printed out my resume, I ran it down to the store the next day. He's like, all right, we'll look at it and we'll give you a call. And then days went by, and days turned into like 2 weeks, and I was really starting to get nervous. So I dropped by one day after work, and as it turns out, the district manager was there, and he was playing Hot Shots Golf, this guy right here. And he recognized me when I walked in, and he asked me if I had played the game before, and I said yes. And so we played, and we actually played around like match play. And I really, he started asking me questions. He started asking me about my experience with gaming and why I was so interested in working there, and about some other things. And I really, really turned on the charm, because I wanted this job so badly. To be able to work around video games all day. And I know that the reality of it is not like what you think it's going to be, but the idea of working around video games all day was a dream job for me at that time. So I really turned on the charm, and I think I really did impress him with my answers. And he said, I actually want to hire you, but your references haven't responded. So I had to get on my references to give the guy a call back. And in another few days, I did get the phone call, and I wound up getting hired as an assistant manager, no less, not even a regular employee, but an assistant manager he hired me as, at a store that they were just opening, which is about 5 minutes from where I live right now. And that was it. At that point, my life started to turn around. I was in a job that I liked. I was making decent money. And I was getting the rest of my life put together, and things were, the stars were aligning. And that's my entrance into FuncoLand. But FuncoLand itself, if you've never been, or if you've never heard about it, it was so gaming centric. When you walked in, you never felt pressured. And when I worked there, that was never the idea to pressure people when they walked in the door. You certainly acknowledge people when they walked in, and that's been a retail staple since the beginning of time. But there was never anything that was really pushed at the beginning. You just kind of kick back and you let people look around, you let people try the games. And to be honest, during my tenure from 1998 through 2000, employees played. I encouraged the employees to play games and to get used to them and to understand them so that they could answer customer questions, because not everyone was the hardcore gamer that I was, where I played as many games as I could to be able to understand what customers may ask. So game playing was encouraged, and the first month or so that I started working for FuncoLand at this new store, traffic was almost non-existent. That's how we got through our shifts every day. We probably had between 5 and 10 customers total between open and close. So they were very long days, which enabled me to be able to play games that I wouldn't have ordinarily been able to play, because they were all available. They were all used copies, so I could look into games that I didn't know about. Or with new games, one of the cool things was that we would open those for customers if they really wanted to try them. The trick was that if they did like it, then that was the copy they were going to buy. But nevertheless, once we had open copies, if customers didn't buy them, we would be able to try them out whenever we wanted. We did that with Metal Gear Solid. My manager and I played all the way through Metal Gear Solid in store on working time, and it was awesome. And that playthrough got me to buy my own copy of the game. There was a game, this game right here, that I opened on Unsealed a while ago. This is called Irritating Stick right here. I had never heard of this game, and I played this at the store because there was an open copy, and I fell in love with it, and I bought it. And I know that this game really irritates people, no pun intended, but it is a game that I love to play just to kind of chill out. It is simple, it is just a maze game, and it's a little over the top with the announcer and things, but nevertheless, I liked to play this in the store when there weren't customers around, and when I bought my own copy, I played it at home quite a bit. And if it wasn't for trying it in the store, I probably never would have bought this because I didn't know what it was. So we always did that. That was something that we always encouraged. You want to try it? Great. I know the game just came out yesterday. Here, let's open up a copy if it's not already open. Let's let you try it. And it was fantastic. The demos were great. Being a manager and assistant manager, I got to put the games in the demo machines that I wanted. So for Halloween, I would have Castlevania 3 in the Super Nintendo, and I would have Castlevania Symphony of the Night in the PlayStation, Castlevania Bloodlines in the Genesis, Castlevania in the N64. I mean, I could just organize it however I wanted. I have to admit, I did actually have this in there probably more often than I should, and no one really played it, but that's beside the point. There were some things about the experience that were kind of similar to what you see today. We didn't push pre-orders back then. What we did was we tried to sell cleaning kits with systems. So if you bought a Nintendo from us, we would try and sell you a $15 cleaning kit, which would extend the warranty if anything went wrong with it. The cleaning kits were not great, if we're being completely honest. They weren't licensed by Nintendo or anything, and yet that was something that we were asked to do. We were also asked to sell subscriptions to Game Informer magazine. That's the first time working at the store that I had even heard of Game Informer, and I became a fan from that point on. Great magazine, and back then it was really, really thin. You're probably looking at about like 50, 60 pages, and that was about it. But I loved reading it, and we had it in the store so we could read it whenever we wanted. So it was another way for us to keep in touch and keep track of what was going on in the video game world. Those were really the two things, the magazine subscriptions and the cleaning kits, and that was all we were really asked to do. And of course there was going to be pushback, and we always came up with excuses. Where my store was, which is the store that I very first visited, it just kind of worked out that I wound up managing that store. The clientele in that area isn't overly rich. It's usually like lower class or middle class people who are kind of struggling to get by. So selling people on $15 cleaning kits when they bought systems that were already fairly expensive was a difficult task, and I remember using that excuse all the time. And the truth of the matter is I probably could have tried a bit harder, but for myself it was spreading the enthusiasm of video games at that time. I loved them, and I wanted everyone else to love them too. I wanted to see how much I cared, and that was infectious. It spread. I had several customers that would come into the store and they wanted to talk to me. So if I wasn't there, one of those rare days that I wasn't there, they would come back on a day that I was there. This right here is just one of the cool goodies that you would get at FuncoLand. I believe you got this when you pre-ordered a system. This is just a CD sleeve or a CD holder that I haven't used in a while. I had two of these at one time, but I gave Pat the NES Punk my other one. So this is really cool. I love the logo, very, very colorful. Just happy memories. Another memory that I have is of this game during the holiday season of 1999. This is Medal of Honor right here. We ran this in the GX TV. We had a GX TV in my store, and we ran it on the PlayStation. And running the intro video where it's conversational German for the American soldier, which is absolutely hilarious. We would run that in the store and people would laugh. This was the first-person shooter that I really played with regularity, and I really enjoyed it. I'm not great at it. It took me a while to get used to the different control schemes, and it really wasn't until Medal of Honor Frontline that I kind of got it. But I played this so much in the store. And of course, this is a game that I had to buy when it came out because it was the sequel of sorts to Parappa the Rapper, which I really enjoyed. This copy, however, if you take a look at the back, see where it says demo game, inventory is new? This was a copy that we had opened to demo for somebody. The customer didn't buy it, so I actually bought this copy. We only had two, and we sold the one that was sealed, so I wound up buying this copy for myself, and this is the one that I've had ever since. I treasure this copy of the game because it is one of my biggest FuncoLand memories, and I love showing off this demo game sticker because we used to do that. And if a customer bought that open copy because it was the only one left, we gave them 10% off. It wasn't something they had to ask for. It is something we just did because that's a customer service thing. That's how we rolled. And it was absolutely fantastic. So I worked in two locations. I worked in West Springfield, again, just 5 minutes or so down the road from where I live now, which is now a GameStop store. I worked there from September of '98 until February of 1999, and then I got promoted. I got the manager job at the Springfield store, which is on Boston Road, which I believe is still there as a GameStop store. I took over for a manager there who unfortunately didn't work out. And there are some questions that I have as to whether I was ready to accept that kind of responsibility. In fact, when I look back on it, I don't think I was. I think I took it because I was happy that the district manager thought that I was manager material. but I really wasn't ready. I was overwhelmed by things like inventory, and I'd never hired employees before, and that really didn't work out so well. And we had a break-in. I remember that just before the Dreamcast had come out. We had empty Dreamcast boxes, and someone broke the front door, broke the glass, and walked in and took the display boxes. Of course, there were no systems in there. And they grabbed some games off the shelf. But I remember getting that phone call at 6 in the morning saying that motion was going off and I had to go to the store. And that was a long, long day. So I had difficulty there, and I felt overwhelmed, so that in the spring of 2000, I was burned out already, and I wound up taking a job at an ISP as a technical support person. And I was probably a bit too rash in leaving, but I just felt that the store that I was at was sinking, and there was nothing that I could do to save it, so I had left. And as it turns out, it was a pretty good decision, because it wasn't long after that GameStop wound up merging with or taking FuncoLand over, and that was the end of that story. It was a great chain. It was a great chain with a great atmosphere. Was it perfect? No. There could have been things that were done better. I'm never a fan of stores or retail stores that push products on customers. I'd much rather, in my view, just let people walk in and get what they want to get and answer questions that they may have and leave it at that. But that's not how retail chains work, and I understand that. Game Crazy, which was an offshoot of Hollywood Video, followed the FuncoLand model for a little while when they first opened. They had a lot of demo stations. They had games lined up for just about every system. They were running tournaments, which we never did, which I thought was a fantastic idea. But unfortunately, as time went on and GameStop started eating Game Crazy's lunch, Game Crazy tried to imitate GameStop, and then Hollywood Video went under, and that's how that story ended. So yeah, I miss FuncoLand every day. It has been sad that they've been gone all these years. I was just lucky enough to have been able to work there. I met some great people during my time there. My store manager I worked under in West Springfield was phenomenal. The staff, the team that we had there was great. I went to weddings for both my manager and for one of our employees, and we were a tight-knit group, and they came to my wedding when I had gotten married. We spent time playing WCW NWO Revenge after work some nights. I wasn't into wrestling until I had met them, and then they kind of turned me onto it, so that was great. I remember the Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time Collector's Edition debacle, where we didn't wind up getting enough to fill pre-orders, and I wound up giving up my copy for another customer to satisfy them, which was fine. I wound up getting mine later. I remember getting my Game Boy Color for Christmas in 1998. Heck, I remember, here's a great story before I close, because I know I've been on about this for 20 minutes. Pokemon obviously was huge, and Pokemon cards were huge in 1999. And we had two young gentlemen come into the store, and by young gentlemen, I mean like upper elementary, lower middle school age. And they came in with some money, and they wanted to buy some Pokemon cards. And of course, we sold what we had. We were always running out of cards, and we were trying to get restocked. And I was never really a stickler about whether they opened them in the store or not. As a matter of fact, I was fine with it, because every so often you'd wind up getting a really cool card, and it would be neat to be a part of that or to see their reaction. So they're opening cards, and they kind of split the packs among each other. And one of them opens a foil Charizard card, which is very valuable and a very big deal. And the two young gentlemen disagreed on whose card that really was, because they pooled money together to be able to get these. And things came to blows in the store with these two gentlemen, and I was starting to get concerned, not so much about them, but about the inventory in the store possibly getting damaged. And I asked them politely to take it outside. And that's Pokemon for you. Those Pokemon cards in 1999, just insane in terms of how many people wanted, and we were always out of stock on those. There's so many stories. Selling Superman 64 and looking bad because they overestimated how many would sell. And my wife at the time was a Blockbuster assistant manager, and she was yelling at me because I had recommended Superman for their store, and people were returning it before the rental period was up and asking what she was thinking. That's one of the reasons why I feel compelled to play Superman 64 every now and again, is because I legitimately feel bad that I had talked people into buying this game because I thought it was going to be pretty good. That's my bad. I own that. I accept that. So, FuncoLand, a fantastic chain that went away far before it should have. And I will definitely talk about them again. I'd love to be able to get my hands on some of those FuncoLand circulars that showed all the prices for the games. Heck, all right, last thing, and then we're done. I loved those. We didn't have to tell people how much used games were, because when you walked in, there was newspaper that would show you the price for every single game that was in FuncoLand's inventory. Now, we didn't have all of the games, so Color a Dinosaur was like a few dollars, and we never had it. We always wanted to get it, and it wasn't because the game would wind up being valuable. No, it was just because it was a cheap game. Heck, every night when I would leave the FuncoLand job in West Springfield when I had my NES before I traded it in towards the Dreamcast, which is a story for a different video, every night I would walk home with a Nintendo game because they were so cheap. So I would always have money around, and my assistant manager would be working. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to buy this game. Yeah, I'm going to buy this game. And that's how I increased my collection. It's that the games were so cheap back then. Saying that Nintendo games are cheap now is just ridiculous, but back then they certainly were. That's how I increased my collection for the NES. And those newspapers were just great. You didn't haggle. You didn't have to go and ask someone how much something was unless it was brand new behind the counter. Everything was right there in front of you. You just looked, saw if we had it, brought it to the counter if or asked us at the counter if we had the game, and that was it. And that was fantastic. Just so many great memories. And those of you who didn't see it or weren't around to see it, I feel for you. What I would say as I close this video is that if you have any independent game stores around you that are very similar, that have demo stations where you can try games, that have games out where you can see, that have that video game player enthusiasm, hold those tight. Support those as much as you can, especially now in these really weird times. If they have like online ordering, do it. Keep these places in business. You need to do it, because otherwise you lose that social aspect, that browsing aspect that so many of us enjoyed years ago, and you don't want to lose that, because that is one of the most fun parts of gaming, even though you don't think it might be. Just looking around in a store and seeing what they have and being surrounded by that gamer atmosphere is something that you just cannot replicate. So make sure you take advantage of those. Thanks for watching this episode of RePete. It was a fun one to do. I'll do another one very soon. Until then, my friends, take care of yourselves. See ya.